I adhere to the idea that a forced fruit can still slake thirst, even if it isn't sweet. For 60 years, I occupied Willow by force. As Willow sat by my bedside, I stared at her while connected to a respirator on my deathbed. Her expressionless face, I felt a great deal of regret. "We've been married for 60 years, I inquired. "Did you ever love me?" Willow rolled her eyes at me the next second. I couldn't speak. I sadly closed my eyes and said, "Willow, I will always love you. However, I also postponed your life. I would cut off all contact with you if I could live again, age, and never cross paths again." When I opened my eyes once more, I found myself reborn into high school. Willow's life had been torched by my flaming heart in a previous life, but that iceberg remained unmelted. This time, I made the decision to avoid her at all costs and never see her again. But Willow showed up at my school the very next day. With her hands on her hips, she pinned me to the stairs. He laughed sarcastically and said, "George, you won't get away from me this time." Chapter 1. In my senior year of high school, I experienced a rebirth. Within the classroom, I felt as though I had just woken up from a long dream. As I glanced around at the familiar teachers and classmates, the Liu family business was failing in my previous life, and our company was close to going bankrupt. My father forced Willow to agree to be with me and leave the person who was pursuing her. Following our marriage, I nearly sacrificed my life for her, doing everything in my power to make her happy. Willow was much more important to me than I was to myself. Willow did not disappoint me. She became my capable assistant and supported my career on the outside. She supported the expansion of the businesses owned by the Wang and Liu families. She was kind and considerate at home, and even had children with me. However, Willow never smiled again after we were married. I was the troublemaker at school, adept at fighting and avoiding school. For 2 consecutive years, Willow had topped the provincial exams, both gifted and attractive. Maybe she had never thought less of me. I had her body beside me. However, her childhood friend, a foreign exchange student, always held a special place in her heart. We shared a bed. However, we both suffered because our dreams were different. I made the decision to move on from Willow and lead a fulfilling life in my new life. My family then called to let me know that they had set up a meeting with a girl at the city library. This girl was the school beauty and model student at a nearby elite high school, and they asked me to make the most of this chance. It was unnecessary to mention her name. I recognized Willow. In a previous life, I went to the provincial Key High School to pursue Willow, who was the school beauty, and I pursued her assiduously. I even collaborated with the families of Wang and Liu to ensure our eventual union. However, I didn't look for Willow in this life. How could she find me? I was perplexed, but I firmly turned down my family's request. Then I got a reprimand from my mother. She exclaimed, "The girl is lovely, kind, and very good at her studies. She specifically came to the house to see you, so she's a perfect match for you. Should you fail to meet her, I've already decided that Willow will be my daughter-in-law, so I'll sever all contact with you, whether you identify me as... It doesn't matter if your mother is your mom." The phone call ended, leaving me speechless. In a previous life, Willow had always had a wonderful relationship with my parents, and had always been kind and moral. I reluctantly consented to the meeting under pressure from my family. My mother pushed a Cartier diamond ring into my hand before I left, reminding me to be kind to Willow is crucial. I sneered to myself in Chapter 2. As soon as I went outside, I removed the ring from the pricey gift box and swapped it out for a cheap toy. I bought a ring for 50 cents from a street vendor. To further infuriate Willow, I purposefully wore sloppy clothing. I applied tattoo stickers all over my body and dyed my hair green. Standing at the city library's entrance, people were giving me odd looks, I noticed. Willow's hair was turning golden in the sunlight as she sat by the window. She emanated a distant, noble, and inaccessible aura. I noticed my own absurd reflection as soon as I walked in. I looked in the mirror and couldn't help but smile resentfully. Perhaps I didn't have to make an effort to look unattractive because Willow would still probably think poorly of me. Willow looked up at me as soon as I entered. Her lips formed a lovely arc, and her eyes were beaming with joy. I couldn't speak. Was she grinning? I purchased Willow luxury cars in a previous life. She had never looked at me well, even though she had expensive watches and purses. I had never seen Willow smile at me before, and it was really lovely. I couldn't speak. Could it be that I unintentionally got it right? Why did she smile when I looked like this? She said, "George, this is a gift I got for you. Her taste is very distinctive. Does she like this style?" Akira Toriyama signed the cover of a brand new Dragon Ball comic book that Willow found inside a tote bag. My all-time favorite comic was Dragon Ball. Could it be a coincidence that I avoided looking at Willow? How did Willow know? I'm forcing myself to relax and avoid making the same mistakes I did in my previous life. "Childish things don't interest me," I said. "You can retract it." My refusal did not infuriate Willow. She asked, still grinning, "Regarding the present your mother requested that you make for me?" I gave her the Cartier box. Willow unwrapped the present, feigning surprise. I jokingly claimed to have purchased it from a street vendor for 50 cents. "I'm not sure if you like it or not." Willow calmly placed the ring on her finger as she asked, her expression half serious, half joking. "Do you mean that I froze? What kind of reasoning is this?" I saw that Willow had put her ring finger featured a plastic ring. I would have been ecstatic and most likely fainted if this had happened in my previous life. However, a forced relationship isn't sweet. So this time I made the decision to let Willow and myself go. I pretended to be unhappy while keeping a straight face. "To be honest, I'm not interested in you," I said. Willow's smile faded as she lowered her gaze, seemingly distressed. She got to her feet and shoved the comic into my hands, and departed from the bookshop. I was in a daze as I held the signed comic. Abruptly, a handmade wooden bookmark fell out of the book. Willow had written a line in handwriting I recognized when I picked up the bookmark, "Even if they are old. There's no need for words because their love is still as pure and new as it was when they first met. Even with white hair, one look is sufficient to comprehend one another's thoughts." I stared at Willow's fading form. My feelings are complicated. Even after she left, she didn't remove the ring I gave her. It made no difference what Willow's intentions were now. We owed each other nothing going forward, and would never cross paths again. The following day at school, Willow's presence at the podium astounded me. How could Willow, who was with her childhood friend, be here? Makoto is a student on exchange. They stood at the front of the class, seemingly a perfect match. These two are new transfer students, and they will be spending their senior year with us, the homeroom teacher said when introducing them. Willow and Makoto introduced themselves as the class applauded. Chapter 3. Their resumes were impressive, especially Makoto's, who was a math whiz and had studied abroad for 3 years. He returned to the country full of honors after winning numerous international awards during those 3 years. I dozed off while sitting in the last row in the wall-mounted corner. A man in the front row nudged my arm and spoke, "The new girl, George, is very attractive. She's definitely your type. Fair skin, lovely face." I gave him an impatient look and yelled, "Get lost." "You," the instructor said, pointing to one of them. "Make room for the new student by moving back. Sitting together will help you both stay motivated because you both have excellent grades." I was getting annoyed. Regardless, Willow was my wife in a previous life. I couldn't articulate how uneasy it made me to witness her sitting so romantically with another man. Willow unexpectedly approached me with her backpack in hand while the others exchanged jealous looks. When she said, "George, please move aside. I'm going to sit next to you," she was still wearing that adorable smile. Makoto was surprised by what he saw at the podium. "Willow, what if I sit next to him?" he inquired. Willow said, "Do whatever you want," without even looking. "I don't care about it." I didn't give her any attention. I quickly fell asleep by resting my head on the desk. When I woke up, a blanket covered me. Willow was sitting beside me, grinning at me while resting her chin on her hand. She said, "I even brought you a pillow. Would you like to use it?" I was taken aback. I snatched up the blanket and pushed it back. All of the men in the rear row had sly smiles on their faces. Willow, however, was completely unaffected by their taunting. Soon, the bell signaled the end of class. Makoto approached Willow's seat with an upset expression. He said, "We've known one another since we were young, Willow. You're sitting with this garbage from the back row, but you won't sit with me." Although Makoto's pursuit of Willow didn't concern me, he shouldn't be making up lies about me. Taking Makoto by the collar, I inquired. A couple of my friends came forward, prepared to fight him. "What on earth were you talking about?" Makoto, however, had no fear. "You guys in the back row are always playing around and never studying," he said with a sense of superiority. "I'll go to the teacher and have you all expelled if you dare to touch me. Aren't you just garbage in society? Neither of us wanted to get into trouble for fighting when the college entrance exams were coming up. I released Makoto's collar and halted my companions. "You guys don't even have the guts to fight. What a bunch of trash," Makoto said, sounding even more arrogant. But then there was a sharp sound that echoed through the room. A slap. Makoto had been slapped by Willow. Across the face, precisely and cleanly. Willow's slap stunned not just Makoto but also me. Makoto asked Willow to hit him for this garbage while covering his face in a state of near disbelief. "George may be playful, but his character and personality are good," Willow said icily. Wiping the smile from her face, "He never disparages or insults people." This stands in stark contrast to certain so-called elite individuals who relish disparaging others with every sigh. In addition, those in the back row will most likely outperform you in the future. Makoto, who was reprimanded and slapped, gave me a hateful look, gripped his face, and then hurried away. It was unbelievable to me. In fact, Willow gave Makoto a slap on my behalf. Chapter 4. After giving it some thought, I understood what was happening. The Liu family was heavily indebted at this point and desperately needed money to stay afloat. It must be she who sent Willow. I have asked my father to explore opportunities for collaboration with my family. I decided to let Willow know about the situation your family is in, difficulties, and requires financial assistance. I won't stop you from working with my family, but please don't bother me after this. After talking, I called some friends and went to unwind at the playground. Willow occupied her desk, head down, deep in contemplation. One of my friends questioned George when we arrived at the playground. "Aren't you even a little moved by a gorgeous girl like that chasing after you?" I was annoyed and didn't reply. In my former life, Willow's mood and grades drastically declined after we started dating. Her ideal university did not accept her. She had always been deeply troubled by that incident. We would only postpone our lives if we remained with her. We'd never be content. As soon as I had that thought, I called my father. I wanted him to assist the Liu family right away. "We are moving forward with our collaboration to prevent Willow from bothering me in the future." My dad sounded perplexed, which surprised me. "What are you talking about, son?" he asked. "We resolved the Liu family's crisis 2 weeks ago. It isn't relevant to us." I hung up the phone after learning that your sister-in-law was the one who helped solve the problem. I'm totally confused. Willow was my dad's sister-in-law. How did she assist her family in resolving the crisis? And why was she suddenly still looking for me if the Liu family had no problems anymore? There was a hand on my shoulder. Makoto was standing there with a resentful expression on his face when I swiftly turned around. "Listen to me, George. Willow is mine," he threatened. "Don't be around her anymore." I couldn't speak. When did I ever get close to her? I asked, "What the hell are you talking about?" Willow has been attempting to get closer to me ever since we first met, I reflected, despite I was still baffled by her motivations. "Are you asking for a beating?" a friend of mine yelled as he pushed Makoto away. I left with my friends because I didn't want to argue with this moron. Makoto made sure to warn me before we left. A group of people from outside the school soon showed up on the playground, so stay away from Willow. Makoto placed candles in the shape of hearts in the center. Makoto held a bouquet of flowers while standing in the center of the candles, yelling out Willow's name. Inquisitive bystanders joined in, chanting along. Willow showed up at the stairs amid the chanting and followed Makoto into the circle of candles. I was standing far away, my heart full of resentment. Every moment of my former life, I experienced love. Like a revolving lantern, my marriage and the years we shared passed before my eyes. Right now, how I wished I could have heard Willow say, "I loved you," in my previous life before I passed away. I would have hurried to her, taken her away from Makoto, and never let her go if she had only said those words. However, I was unable to do anything but watch her with another man. Then, to the surprise of everyone, Willow threw the bouquet Makoto had given her to the ground across the playground and knocked the candles around them over. She threw off her flimsy white skirt and ran toward me. Chapter 5. Willow asked, "Do I accept flowers from other men?" with a smile on her face. I was shocked. Don't you feel heartbroken? Was Willow purposefully stalling in order to accept flowers from Makoto? Willow's pure and adorable appearance in her white dress had a devastating effect on me, all to provoke me. Flustered, I turned and ran without thinking. Willow questioned me as she quickly caught up to me and gently tugged on my sleeve. "I gave you a bookmark. Did you see it? Do you know what it says about my inability to face Willow? I accelerated my pace and gave an evasive, I don't know response. Willow said, no, you know. Willow moved ahead of me and grabbed both of my hands as we arrived at the stairwell. In a fit of rage, she pinned me against the wall. George, don't think that just because you've been reborn, she snorted. The situation has changed. You ruined my entire life in the previous one. I want all of yours this time. I will hold on to you in this life and the next. I will always be your woman, George. I felt completely lost when I looked at Willow and saw her determined yet frustrated expression. In a previous life, she consistently distanced herself from everyone due to her cold and aloof demeanor. Whether it was me or someone else in her immediate vicinity, Willow's face hardly showed any emotion. She always exuded a goddess's icy, distant aura. She concentrated on managing the home and raising our kids after we were married, but we hardly ever shared any emotional bonds. Even though it seemed unreal that Willow would ever tell me how she truly felt, I couldn't shake the thought. I bowed my head in struggle and gently pushed her hands away before saying, Willow's marriage to me in the previous life truly wounded you. I could see how sad you were. And I was also heartbroken. My family's assistance is no longer required now that the issues facing the Liu family have been resolved. You go your way, and I'll go mine from now on. In this life, as well as the next, we will never cross paths again. Willow's expression changed from one of anger to one of hurt. I said, she said, George, are you behaving in this manner because I was somewhat distant toward you in your previous life? You never once yelled at me. After a few days of our rebirth, you no longer simply yell at me. You're bullying me too. Willow's voice grew increasingly pathetic as tears began to fall. In a previous life, I had spoiled Willow. She bore me children in addition to caring for my parents and family. It would not have been possible without love. I wasn't rejecting Willow because I didn't think she was important. I simply didn't want her to experience the same agonizing life once more, marrying someone who didn't love her and living in misery forever. I said, when you get back, I'll move your seat next to Makoto, and turned to go, waving my hand. Don't approach me from now on. Willow interrupted me once more, her voice brimming with rage as she said, why are you rejecting me, George? Have you changed your heart in the days since our rebirth? Willow was crying uncontrollably, and I couldn't face her. I would most likely soften and give in if I did. My heart hasn't changed, I said, avoiding her as I left. It hasn't changed for you either. Chapter 6. Your heart has never had me, but my eyes are full of you. I'm worn out from this life. I've given up. I'll find a normal girl who lives a simple life and sees me alone. Willow ceased pursuing me. However, I could hear her crying a little. I came close to turning around and holding her a couple of times in an attempt to revive our relationship. But for her sake and my own sanity, I forced myself to return to the classroom. I moved Willow's seat to Makoto's and packed her bag. The afternoon self-study bell rang after everyone had finished. Makoto, who looks unkempt, walked into the classroom. His face flushed with excitement as he noticed Willow's bag on the vacant seat next to him. She appeared to be a stewed pig. Willow walked silently into the classroom, her face grim. Out of instinct, Makoto started moving towards me. Makoto stepped in front of her, excited. I knew you wouldn't turn me down, Willow, he said. Previously, you were simply too anxious. That's why you fled timidly. You moved your seat next to me because you now regret it, correct? The entire class was buzzing as Willow gave Makoto a furious look and gestured to her bag, asking, who did this? People are gossiping in an effort to identify Willow's mover. I've known Willow for years, but I've never seen her this irate. I couldn't see why she would be upset with me for letting her sit with Makoto, a friend from childhood. In a past life of mine, I would always apologize if Willow ever became irate. Observing her hands shake as before, I was once again obedient. I obeyed and got up. It was me, I said. The rest of the class, including Makoto, stared at me in shock. Willow then gave Makoto a forceful slap across the face. Holding his burning cheek, Makoto asked Willow, looking utterly shocked and irate, he moved your bag, so why are you hitting me? Willow said icily, if you ever bother me again. She snatched up her bag, came charging toward me, and stopped in front of me, saying, I'll hit you again. Well, you hit him, so you can't hit me now, I said, taking a step back. Willow angrily threw her bag in front of me and told me to put everything back where it belonged right away. My companions in the rear gazed at me. I was known as the troublemaker in high school. If I got into a fight with someone, I was known as the troublemaker. We always used our fists to solve the problem. When I stood up, everyone departed, avoiding becoming entangled in the chaos. However, I dutifully opened Willow's bag and put her books back in the drawer the next moment. I set up her desk supplies and I arranged the notebooks in the same order as before. I then smiled and asked Miss Liu if this was okay. The men in the rear gave me a scornful look. Willow, still filled with anger, took a seat and spoke. "I'll be furious if you do this again." Chapter 7. I sighed with an instinctive sense of relief. I never saw Willow so furious in my previous life. She never lost her temper and was always aloof and cold. I was actually afraid when I saw how drastically her mood had changed. Additionally, I was unable to a solitary strand of hair covered her head. With a cheeky smile, one of my pals leaned over and inquired, "You are acquiring the ability to care for your wife." So I clenched my fist and declared, "You believe that I am incapable of striking you. However, I am incapable of striking her." The homeroom teacher abruptly pushed the door open while the students were studying on their own. A 60-year-old lady with a sullen expression loudly slapped the podium. "Who confessed this afternoon on the playground? Stand up," she said. Makoto and Willow both got to their feet simultaneously. The teacher's attitude instantly softened when she saw them, and she even grinned. "Oh, it's you two," she said. "You both have good grades." However, the time for the college entrance exam is now. Early romance shouldn't interfere with your academic pursuits. "I'm not in a relationship with him," Willow shot back at the teacher. "It's he who continues to annoy me. He's aware that I have feelings for someone else." The teacher asked Willow, "Can you tell me who the person you like is?" In shock, Willow pointed directly at me without hesitation. The instructor's expression darkened once more. She reprimanded George consistently slacks off and is the class's troublemaker. How is it possible to be friends with someone like him? Willow refused to back down and said, "Teacher, I don't think grades reflect everything. In contrast to grades, the most important factor is character." Suddenly, a group of students in the back who had received poor grades cheered. A look of disgust twisted the teacher's face. She appeared as though she had just swallowed a dead fly. She angrily yelled, "Go stand in the office, both of you," while pointing at us. I was unfairly forced to go to the office with Willow because of this. On the way, something strange struck me in Willow's words. "When you stated that character is more significant than grades," I questioned Willow. "Does that indicate that Makoto's character has problems?" Willow said, "Yes," when she brought up Makoto. Willow's eyes were full of contempt. "I've known Makoto for a long time," she said. "He has never taken life seriously. He even got a girl pregnant while he was studying overseas. Afterwards, when the girl found Makoto after obtaining a visa, he flatly denied everything. The girl nearly committed suicide in the hospital because she was unable to pay for a plane ticket back to her homeland. I only did it because I couldn't stand it. Observe how I assisted the poor girl in getting home. I suddenly realized why you were rushing to the hospital all those times. It was because of Makoto's predicament that Willow said otherwise, and I felt a wave of regret. I assumed that Makoto's illness was the reason Willow told me she was going to the hospital. She had traveled to care for him. I always accompanied the housekeeper when I was ill. However, when Makoto was ill, Willow would put everything on hold to spend 6 weeks caring for him. Every time I contemplated this, my heart shattered. Willow's eyes became even more tearful as she said, "So in your heart," after everything had been resolved. I waved my hand quickly and said, "I've never said that, because I'm just that loose woman." Chapter 8. Willow sighed deeply and said, "You always blame me for not being open with you. However, what about you? You also never express who you are. You constantly overanalyze situations when they occur. However, never bother to ask me directly." With a darker face than before, the homeroom teacher pushed the door open. "I told you two to stand in the office and think instead of flirting and talking about love," she reprimanded. "Are you even aware of what you did wrong?" Willow and I didn't say anything. Ultimately, it wasn't like we'd done something really bad. We were just in a relationship. I had never seen someone fail to enter a relationship. Renowned university due to being in a relationship, and I haven't witnessed anyone being accepted simply because they weren't in a relationship. Willow and I did not respond to the homeroom teacher's prolonged reprimands. She shuddered in anger. She was trembling as she gestured toward us and shouted, "You two will each write a 3,000-word essay tomorrow at the school assembly. Engage in self-criticism and recite it aloud on stage. I'll record it as a serious disciplinary measure if you don't." We didn't care. Our grades would allow us to attend any school we desired. Barring expulsion, no disciplinary action would affect us. The housekeeper had already parked the car outside after school. My mother called me at that precise moment to tell me that they had prepared a large feast at home and asked me to bring Willow along. Despite the fact that Willow and I had resolved some misunderstandings, our 60-year separation was difficult to overcome. However, I was prepared to give Willow and myself another chance in this life. I inquired. Willow didn't directly respond when asked if she wanted to join us for our family dinner tonight. Rather, she asked, "Are you inviting me?" She smiled, and before I could respond, I heard a motorcycle revving in the distance. After taking off his helmet once more, Makoto clung to Willow like a piece of gum that would not go away, persistently nagging her. "Willow, I'm hosting a party this evening," he said. Willow hesitated before responding. "William, would you like to come?" "Go ahead, George." When I heard that, my heart fell. I'll stay here with him. Maybe she wasn't in love with me yet. Most likely, what she'd said to me as we stood in the office was merely restitution for the pain I had experienced in a previous life. I stopped lingering. I climbed into the car and drove off by myself. The table was laden with delectable dishes when I arrived home. However, my parents continued to work in the kitchen. After cleaning her hands, my mother came out and greeted me warmly at the door. She asked, looking perplexed, "Where's Willow? Why didn't she come with you?" She noticed that I was by myself. I answered, "She won't be coming." My parents took a seat when the food was ready. Tension weighed heavily on the once enthusiastic family meal. "We've all met Willow," my dad said, in a tone that was a little questioning. "Regardless of her character, she has the ideal temperament and appearance. Otherwise, it's obvious that she feels something for you. She would never have visited our home. Willow won't get into my car. Did you do something to aggravate her?" It made me uncomfortable to stay with Makoto. My mood only got worse when my parents started to question me. I said, "Willow's parents don't like me, and she still has feelings for her childhood sweetheart. We won't find happiness if we end up together." Chapter 9. I then told my parents everything that had transpired today. When they heard what I said, they were both in disbelief. After much hesitation, my mother spoke with incredulity. "Willow, the type of person you're describing shouldn't be her." My hand trembled with anger as I responded. "Why won't she even get in my car if she's not that kind of person?" Willow's voice suddenly came from outside. I apologized for being late. I was stunned and unable to move. Why was Willow at my house when she was with Makoto? My dad kicked me after Willow stumbled while carrying a large bag of presents inside the house, saying I reluctantly assisted Willow with her belongings. "But why are you still standing there? Go help her carry the things." My parents continued to support me at the dinner table. My mother gently questioned Willow. "Why didn't you bring George back with you after school?" Willow calmly answered, "I'm late because I didn't want George to be envious, Mom. He constantly believes that there's a relationship between me and a classmate, which is a little petty. I couldn't resist, so today after school, I arranged for us to have a conversation, and I told him to stop bothering me. If not, George would find it awkward to see us together." When I told my dad this, he responded angrily. "A real man wouldn't be so petty," he reprimanded angrily. I was still hesitant to move. "So you go ahead and serve Willow some food, and apologize." I asked Willow, "What did you and Makoto discuss today? How did it go?" Willow replied nonchalantly, "I didn't have much to say. I simply told him to stop bothering me going forward and slapped him. If he appears in front of me once more, I'll strike him once more." I couldn't speak. I swallowed and reluctantly gave Willow some food, wondering how she had turned into such a violent beauty. After the meal, which my parents and she attended, Willow spent the night in the guest room. That night, I lay in bed, tossing and turning. In this life, Willow had undergone significant change. Makoto, who was now a pariah and had once been close to her, everything appeared to be moving in a more positive way. Even I felt compelled to make amends with Willow. One thing, though, continued to bother me. In a previous life, despite spending 60 years with Willow, I was never able to soften her heart. In this life, She was the one who actively sought me out and even clung to me. How could a non-loving person, after 60 years, did I suddenly change? Or was that even possible? Willow was staying with me for another purpose. I kept flipping it over in my head. When I woke up the following morning, I had an epiphany. Damn. Our homeroom teacher was a grumpy elderly woman, going through menopause, and I neglected to write the self-criticism. Irritable. Every other day, she would unavoidably criticize anyone who disagreed with her. Today, Willow and I were required to present our 3,000-word self-evaluation to the entire school assembly. The elderly woman would undoubtedly be frustrated with us if we made a mess of this and made her feel ashamed. Chapter 10. I skipped breakfast in order to avoid being the target of the teacher's ire. I quickly searched the internet for a solution, copied the self-criticism template. I even enlisted the driver and the housekeeper to copy a passage in my handwritten style. I had at least completed the 3,000 words by the time we were prepared to depart. We immediately went to the playground to form a line at school. Every Monday after the flag-raising ceremony, there was a school-wide assembly. In addition to recognizing a few exceptional students, those who disobeyed the rules would face criticism at the assembly. Willow purposefully stood next to me as we formed a line. Just 1 minute remains before it's our turn. I asked nervously, "Have you finished writing your self-criticism?" before speaking in front of thousands of people. Willow calmly retorted, "I haven't written anything." I nearly lost my breath. "So, what do you intend to do?" Willow smiled as she said, "You'll know in due time." The stage was nearing the end of the speeches. It was our turn, and we had less than a minute left. If I couldn't speak in front of thousands of people, what would happen? Without a doubt, I would feel ashamed. The teacher would most likely reprimand me after that. I paused for a second. I then gave Willow my critique of myself. "Just read this, and I'll take the blame for both of us," I said. I had to take this hit for her because I had been her husband once. Suddenly, Willow refused to accept the paper and gave it her full attention. My eyebrows were twitching from anger. If the reprimand later caused you to cry, Willow and I were called up to the stage shortly after, so don't blame me. When the instructor signals without feeling anything, I began reading my own criticism of myself. I read through 3,000 words in a short amount of time. I was hoping for a smooth transition. The instructor handed Willow the microphone after I finished. The instructor stated, "It's your turn, Willow." Willow accepted the microphone, but she refrained from criticizing herself. There was a gleam of resolve in her eyes as she turned to face me. "George," she said, "I don't know when I fell in love with you, but I knew when I was going to lose you, and when I finally realized it. I realized how much I cherish you. I can't even express how sorry I am to see you lying in bed, ready to leave me. You gave me 60 years of opportunities, but I never felt like I had done enough to earn your love. I never held them in high regard. I felt 1,000 times more regret after you left. However, it was already too late. I therefore decided to join you on the day of your funeral." Willow had already started crying by the time she had finished speaking. Stunned, I stood there. It felt like a lightning strike. Did she just say something? Willow, who hadn't been nice to me in 60 years, wanted to die with me. She was ready to sacrifice her life for me. After giving it some thought, it appeared that she could only be here for one reason. If not, how could Willow, who was healthy and unharmed, have died 7 days after I did? My heart began to tighten as soon as I glanced at her once more. Willow seemed to have never really understood me. Just as I had never fully understood her, neither could I. After all, how could I have children from someone who didn't love me? Never leave chapter 11 because I was lost and didn't know what to do. Stay with me forever. Willow took hold of my arm and slammed into my chest. She spoke in a voice that only the two of us could hear as she leaned close to my ear. "In the past life, it was you who pursued me, but I hurt you this badly. This life, let me win you back." Willow kissed me as soon as she finished speaking. We kissed for what seemed like over 10 minutes, in front of thousands of people. The teachers in the area forgot about stopping us because of this audacious move. After a considerable amount of time, the teachers finally reached their limit. At last, they separated us. They instructed us to remain at home and reflect for a week, after which they would inform our parents. This week of introspection didn't worry me too much. While sharing a kiss on stage they essentially broke school rules, but it wasn't a big deal. Kissing wasn't against the law, after all. We just had to write another self-criticism after the 7 days and return to class. But the situation was much more serious than I had anticipated. The week flew by. As I got into the car to head back to school, I couldn't help but get excited at the prospect of seeing Willow once more. After all, it was the first time in our many years of marriage that Willow had given me such a passionate kiss. However, after I went back to school, Willow's seat was vacant when I arrived. I found out that someone had told the media about Willow's kiss after asking around, making quite a commotion. Willow's school suspension resulted from the negative attention she received. Regarding whether her dismissal was unavoidable, they were still discussing it. Taken aback, I hurried to Willow's house right away to learn more. Willow ran up to embrace me when I got there, because she had been crying so much, and her eyes were red. Her kiss on me gained widespread publicity, and things were getting out of control. If this became a public scandal, Willow would surely face dismissal. Willow's greatest dream in a previous life was to enroll in a prominent university. Now she desired to atone for her past life's regrets. However, expulsion would prevent her from realizing that dream. I held Willow's hand and assured her that I would take care of things. She had always given me unwavering support in her previous life. She was always there to help, whether it was with family or business matters. I was able to successfully run the family business with her assistance. Our children became the company's pillars because they excelled in both academics and character. It was my turn to stand by Willow this time. Willow sobbed while curled up in my arms, similar to a tiny, soaked kitten. I started looking into the person responsible for the media hype as soon as I got home. It makes sense that the events at school wouldn't have had such a profound social impact. It gained popularity as a topic because someone was in charge behind the scenes, and Makoto discovered me before I could complete my investigation. He called me covertly to an empty staircase after class. Makoto said with a cunning smile, "George, aren't you so deeply in love with Willow? Now I'm giving you a chance to let her return to class." I asked, suppressing my rage. "What do you want?" It became evident that Makoto was the one in charge. Makoto retorted haughtily, "I want you to acknowledge in front of the press that Willow didn't kiss you, but that you attacked her." Chapter 12. What a cunning plan. If I complied with Makoto's requests, I would probably face criminal charges and have my record permanently changed, in addition to expulsion. I was so angry that I clenched my fist to hit him, but he took a covert camera out of his chest pocket instead. Makoto sarcastically made fun of. I lowered my fist grudgingly and said, "Go ahead, hit me if you dare. I'll just tell the teachers afterward." They shifted their focus to the classroom. In the days that followed, I began to repress the Wang family's power. Makoto's funds caused a media frenzy. As soon as the situation subsided, nobody seemed to be interested in it anymore. Soon after, my father set aside funds to build a new school library on an abandoned plot of land. After completing these 2 steps, Willow's suspension was lifted by the school, enabling her to resume her studies. Makoto, however, was unable to avoid his fate from past lives. They dismissed him as soon as he entered. Major issues while studying overseas. Soon, it was time for the college entrance exam. Willow and I both received outstanding scores and were accepted as graduates of Tsinghua University. We finally put the regrets from our previous lives to rest. This life is our opportunity to make amends for those mistakes. Fate has given George and Willow a second chance, but will they break free from their past, or are they destined to repeat history? What would you do if you were given a chance to rewrite your love story? Share your thoughts in the comments.